Mike Berry joined us for one of our stream team live beekeeping chats, and the conversation turned to how we each were going to be feeding our bees in the wintertime. It was really a great conversation. I hope you'll enjoy another stream team nugget. Is there a mineral supplement that you guys use at all that you know of? I just put some salt. Sometimes I'll put some like cowlick or whatever salt in a little bit of water and that kind of thing. But I don't actually put out a.
I barely
I,
feed mine, so I can't.
I mean,
Speak
there
to
are
that.
some minerals in Hive Alive, and I know Brian
Yeah.
uses that. We're using a lot of that too. We mix that with our Pro Suite and get, or trying to get 1 to 2 gallons of that through every colony, just to help clean them up. But primarily, I think for the thymol and the a little bit of those amino acids. But when I think of minerals, I guess I think to our dairy cows where we would, have
like salt
specific
or
minerals and things that
I
we're
don't
trying to
know.
get to the cows.
And then here's another question from Brian Lee that is a while back, but it says, do I use sugar or fondant, dry sugar or fondant during the winter? And I think we've all used a little bit of that, a little bit of fondant. I know, Brian, you've used sugar and fondant in the past. Mike, you used a little bit of fondant last year.
Mm-hmm.
I had some fondant, Hive Alive fondant that actually I think saved quite a few of my colonies last year when they were absolutely starving. I just happened to have some on hand. I was going to wait to use it till this year, but I went into colonies. I think it was probably in February, and they had zero food at all. Like they had warmed up, I guess, and they consumed every bit of food that was in there. And I put that fondant on there, and that I believe saved 30, 40 of my colonies probably. But I've the only fondant I've ever used is a Hive Alive. I've never used dry sugar.
Yeah.
I mostly put out, and we have pollen that comes in most of the year here. So I usually, mostly what I put out is just, syrup. That's usually what I use. I don't, but last year it saved me.
I used to put sugar on them. That was just my go-to of what I did. It was more like the mountain camp.
Mm-hmm.
I used to put sugar on them, but last year, and now I was late to the game with the fondant because I didn't put it on. God, I probably saw 50 videos all over before I put it on. And when I added it onto my colonies last year, they devoured it, and like I said then too, throughout the year, I used the fondant, I used the liquid, I used the pollen patties. I don't know if it was just that constant, supplementing of my colonies that led to where they're at now, but I have very strong colonies this year.
It's interesting to try to wrap your head around the different approaches based on the different scales and whatever the goals are. Prime example of what we do based on our scale and things. We used dry sugar for years and years, and I at the time contributed a lot of the success on some of these colonies overwintering to the dry sugar. In reality, it was more so the dry sugar was a desiccant and help absorbing some of the moisture, keeping. I think it does a better job at that than actually feeding the bees. Did they eat some of it? Yeah, but a lot of it they end up dragging out, out the front door, making a mess inside the colony. Or if you've seen diarrhea streaks through, all that dry sugar too, it seems like, well, it does work. Is there something better that's more effective? And I think that's where a lot of us are have in the past used fondant or are using that primarily. I know this year I'm not putting not an ounce or a pound of dry sugar on any colonies. It's all fondant for lots of reasons, but having that thymolated product on top of the hive through the Hive Alive to me makes a lot of sense. The packaging's nice.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
I like the Hive Alive.
What do you think? What do you think the advantage of the Hive Alive is, Greg? And you guys, what do you think?
The big one is it being thymolated is massive.
What in what way, for the mites or?
That and I think to cleanse the gut, the winter stores. We don't. Most folks maybe don't know this, but you've heard folks that everyone respects, like Bob Benny, talking about things like gut health and how hard honey actually can be on the bee's digestive system, especially stored honey. When the bees are going through and actually processing, metabolizing, using that can be rough on them. If the bees are using, harder sugars, even maybe like candy bricks or sugar boards, there's a digestion process that needs to happen. What I like and what really caught my attention with Hive Alive over every other supplement out there is the fact that it was thymolated. There are scientific studies that are peer reviewed that has many years of research on it to show that here's the benefits of it. And then you've got beekeepers that are using it that say, hey, when I use this, I'm seeing a difference. To me, that's a big deal. What caught my attention was the fact that it was thymolylated. Yeah, there is some lemongrass oil, there are some amino acids, there are minerals, all fantastic. We all don't even have to argue the warrant of that. But for me, the fact that we can put something in that might help with gut health, keep the gut clean as they are processing some of those more difficult to digest food stores, that's a big deal. But one thing that thymol is also used for inside of a colony is things with when you get into like any kind of a fungal issues inside of a colony. So you close a colony up and it gets warm or it gets moist and it stays like that for a while. You can start developing things like chalk brood. You get into these other little weird scenarios where that thymol going throughout that colony. There's studies that show that actually helps clear and clean those kind of things up. One of the things that the folks at Hive Alive tout, which I'm really interested to see what that does, is also helping with nosema. Now, we've never had a problem with nosema. Of course, you'll see dysentery coming out of the wintertime, the diarrhea streaks and things like that. I've never put that under a microscope to see if there's actually spores in there. But the fact that the thymol also helps with that gut aid to help prevent and clean up things like that, to me, it's a big deal. It's more, well, I want to say it's more of an investment than dry sugar, but have you seen the price of dry sugar? Go try to make a 2.2 pound inverted sugar board to put on your colony. It's not going to be cheap either.
You said the key there, though, also another thing with the fondant, and fondant like that in that form, inverted sugar, and it's easily digestible at that point. It doesn't have to be inverted by the bee. It's better on the gut itself. In Europe, they've been doing that type of inverted fondant for many
for a long
years.
time. Yeah.
If you look at the skep videos that were out, I think I mentioned this before, there was those skep videos of that Heather beekeeper, the master beekeeper, they call him, and they're brilliant, those guys, how they did it. But that's what they used. Inverted sugar fondant is what they put on those hives years and years and years ago in the winter. And you just could never get it in the U.S. Then Hive Alive comes around and they bring those out. I wanted it more for the fondant itself than the Hive Alive. But the more, I'm like Greg, the more I read about the Hive Alive, I'm thinking, I don't know. We don't have problems with cleansing flights and things of that nature. Shoot, like I said earlier, we're getting wild mustard in January.
Yeah.
But but how can you argue with something that's cleaning out your bees anyway in the few times or not, even if it's down here?
So let me ask you this. I guess in my situation, Mike, I'm in a similar situation to you. I've never used anything like that until last year. I just did it as an emergency, and I happen to have some. How much are you going to use? How often are you going to use it? Is it going to be something you leave on there all winter, or just a time or two during the winter, or what are you going to do?
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait till around December, January, and I'm going to go ahead and slap it on there, and it more of a boost than anything, just to keep them, kind of an insurance policy, just to keep them secure. But I want that Hive Alive on there as they're coming out of winter too, is because of course after the solstice we're going to start seeing bees brood coming out in January. Brood's going to start coming in, and I want to feed them up with that stuff because I did have it last year trying it, and as an emergency feed, I didn't want to use granulated sugar. I hate putting granulated sugar on my colony. Now, I'm speaking from the South, so I'm not speaking to anybody up north. I know you have to do what you have to do, but I used to say emergency feed is exactly that. It's emergency. As a hobby beekeeper, I can make sure they're heavy prior to going into the winter. And what I didn't want to do was on the ones that were hungry, throw the sugar on there. So I put it on there and saw how well it worked. And honestly, it lasted very well on hungry hives.
It really did.
I was surprised, right?
They don't consume it really quickly either. It's like it takes some time to work at it.
It's on demand.
So, Mike, did you feel like the bees built up on it, or it just mostly kind of kept them strong and steady?
For me, it kept them strong and steady, I feel like. And that's why what I'm going to do this year, since I bought an extra few cases to be sure I had them, and my hives ended up all heavy except for 3 now, I'm just going to spread it out all over all of them and make sure everybody's got a patio on around January.
You guys up in Ohio, Brian, it seemed like last year you kind of kept some sugar in there and some Hive Alive throughout the winter. Are you going to do that again, or just kind of keep the fondant on there? How are you going to?
I'm just going to use fondant. I'm not going to mess with dry sugar anymore.
Will you just kind of keep it on there all the time, or will you just? Is that what you're going to do?
I'm putting it on mine now. If they don't need it, they're not going to take it. You know, I had one last year that they only took about half of, you know, that fondant patty. What is it, 2 pounds, 4 ounces, whatever. The others devoured it. I mean, they cleaned out even the little corners. I had one that it still had a lot of weight in it, and they took literally, it was like that much out of the center. That was it. So,
well, Brian, can I ask you something real quick though? On that note, it makes me wonder. With your temperatures up there, your bees actually cluster for days on end, where ours don't.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, okay, so it had a lot of stores. Was it maybe a smaller colony and it didn't move? And maybe the other larger ones did move, because mine, they consumed it slow and steady. But even though they had honey, they consumed it.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what the dynamics of those colonies were when you had that happen.
They were all about similar. Now the only one, the one that was larger, was the colony that I had in that polystyrene hive. I had to put the fondant on them a little bit of a special way, just the way that those poly hives are made. So I really can't say like that one. They didn't take as much, but the feeder and just the setup of that type of a poly hive, you don't have like a standard inner cover and things like that with those. So it's just different. So you really can't look at that and say, oh, well, this or that. Only reason why I'm putting it on this early now is I don't want to have to fiddle with them that much.
Right.
You know, I don't want to have to go back out in another couple weeks when we might have snow or I'm walking through mud. I just don't want to mess with it. And then I'm already putting on, like I said, those Vivaldi boards with my burlap. I just got insulated inner covers for all of my 10 frame boxes. So I'm insulating the top of them, putting Hive Alive fondant on them, and that's going to be their winterization. I'm not going to wrap them.
Greg, what about you? How are you going to incorporate it in your operation?
Well, I'll be right up in the. I'll be right from the very beginning. Say we are absolute minimalists when it comes to what is the absolute minimum effort that it takes to get these bees through the wintertime. Let's start there. And then once we stop killing bees and we start seeing success and we see it year after year, okay, cool. That's the plan. Let's tweak it as time goes on. What we found is, because we are focusing on queens and nukes, I absolutely love to overwinter smaller colonies. So I'm overwintering a lot of 5 frame singles. There might be some 5/5s, 10 frame singles. For me, I'm not a real big fan of doubles or anything bigger than that. They're more of a wild card for me in my area. So what I like to do is put a 2-inch shim, a feeding shim that you can also use as a treatment shim on top. There's a little bit of a ventilation cut in it, and then I can plop whatever I want to on it right away. Right now, I am feeding. Believe it or not, this is going to be contrary. So disclaimer: if there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, that's on you. This is just for me. I've got this guy right here. This is not a how-to. This is just how Greg does it. Okay.
Right.
I have thymelated Pro Suite. I have Hive Alive boosted Pro Suite on every single colony right now in bucket feeders. And yes, it's going to be 20 degrees at night, and it's going to be 18 degrees at night. But guess what? It's going to be 48, 50, and 60 during the days, and there's nothing out there for the bees. And they're still going to go out and forage and try to sing for their supper. So for me, I've got the liquid on top of there right now, and I still will a little bit longer, but it's a 3-to-1. So now that we got that out of the way, once I pull that off, what I'll be doing is putting the Hive Alive fondant on everything. And I like what Brian said. He's going to go ahead and put it on right now. If they need it, great. If they don't, great. But if they start to dig into that, they're getting all the extra benefits from the seaweed, from the thymol, from the things that are in there that are going to continue to help get them healthy early. So I think that's a big deal. We are budgeting 2 to 3 patties per colony at 2 pounds, 4 ounces per packet. That's not a big deal. On our website, when we sell that, on the website it's case only. When we ship that, it's like $5.33 a patty on the website if you order a case. If you come to the shop and buy them individually, it's like $6. So when you factor in the time that it takes to mix anything up, the fact that you're using sugar that's not inverted and then has nothing else in it to help with the bees' digestion, to me, $10 or $15 a colony at 200 or 300 colonies, if that's going to help give them what they need, great. And guess what? If they don't use it, cool. Because when it gets warm, they will. But on smaller colonies, they seem to hit the ceiling faster, right? So as they're moving and burning through their stores, they're going to hit the top of that box before any other colony will. So if I've got that fondant right on top, waiting on them, on those warm days, if they do go up and hit it, great. They can just go to town and mow down on that fondant, and I can quickly crack a lid and pop a new one in. And I can do that all winter long if I have to, and I'm not worried about it. That is an expense for me that is 100% worth it, because when these bees are busting at the seams coming out of the spring, I know their gut health is going to be right. I know they're going to be well fed, and for me, that means that's more brood, that's more bees to make splits, that's more bees to support raising more queens. So for me, it's a win-win to go ahead and start putting that on just as soon as this weather breaks. That's my thought process, you know.
I have 2 cases that for my 11 colonies, I have 2 cases of Hive Alive.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean, it doesn't go bad. What's the worst to happen? If they don't use it, guess what? They will destroy it the first of spring, and then they get a boost in the spring. Mm-hmm. Where I'm really looking forward to using this is getting our nukes off to even a faster jump in the spring. Mm-hmm. When it's cool and we make those early splits and we're getting them rocking and rolling. Hey, cool. I'll put an entire patty on each one of those. Let them consume, let them get built up, let them rock and roll, and then start building them up.
Just a quick comment on the "it doesn't go bad" comment you made. I mixed up a 5-gallon bucket of Hive Alive back in the spring and used it on some of the new when I just used it some, but I had a little bit left in there, and I had it sitting out in the backyard. It may have still been out there when you guys came down, Mike and Greg. I'm not sure if it was just sitting over in the corner. I may have used it by then, but that thing sat out there in the spring and summer heat until July or August. Yeah. And I thought I was going to open that bucket up. It was a liquid Hive Alive mixed with sugar water.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to open that bucket up and just have an absolute rank mess. But when I opened it up, it just was the same. And nothing wrong with it. Fed it to the bees, and they sucked it right down. They just sucked it right down. So I'm a believer in it. It seems like it's really good stuff. Well, that definitely was an interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I know a lot of the conversation turned towards fondant and the Hive Alive product particularly. We realize there are a lot of different products out there, and so you just have to do your homework and figure out what works best for you. Well, what'd you think of that? I'd appreciate if you leave your thoughts and ideas and comments down below. We do these Stream Team live beekeeping chats every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it rotates through my channel here at Bruce's Bees, Brian's channel over at Castle Hives, and Greg's channel at Nature's Image Farm. If you subscribe to the channel, I'll be putting a post to my community of upcoming events with the Stream Team, and also you'll be able to see what's going on my channel. And we also have a Facebook page called the Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. So it'd be great if you go over there, join that group, and you'll be able to see upcoming events and videos and kind of what's going on. Have a lot of exciting times ahead, a lot of things coming up, and so we hope you'll join us over there. I appreciate you watching this video. Hope you'll join us for future Stream Team videos, and also you'll check out the playlist here at this channel for Stream Team Nuggets. Y'all take care, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.